We got Chase Illig, played college baseball at WVU as a catcher, uh, played professional baseball with the Yankees in their minor league system, coached with the Red Sox, and currently runs the Appalachian Aces travel organization. Chase, appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Marty.
Yeah, we could almost take up like the whole first half of the interview, just kind of listing all your baseball stuff. So you'll bring some good advice and insights to us today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about like your kind of your playing career and how you ended up on the coaching side?
Yeah, I mean, grew up in West Virginia, down in Bluefield in the southern part of the state. Always loved playing baseball, playing catch in the backyard with my dad, hitting balls in the backyard with my mom when dad's at work. Just always grew up loving the game and was fortunate enough to be able to play at a pretty high level with going to WVU, playing with the Yankees. And then once I got out, just knew that I wanted to stay in the game as much as possible. And that's when I took over the Appalachian Aces. And then fast forward a year later, and I'm coaching with the Red Sox now as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So that puts you. What I like about this conversation is that puts you in contact with some pretty high level pitchers, right? So you get to see on the Red Sox side the high end of what you're trying to put together at the Aces level to show these guys, hey, this is this is where you got to be, right? You're not there yet. We still got some stuff to take to climb that ladder.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I've been fortunate to be around a lot of good players, a lot of good coaches, and just fortunate to be able to pick their brain on a daily basis.
So tell me about how did the Appalachian Aces come about? What's the goal of that organization, and what are you guys all about there?
Yeah, back in 2018 when it started, it was just a thing where it's no secret that West Virginia as a whole is a pretty under recruited state just because of a numbers thing. Like coaches are going to go to Pennsylvania, coaches are going to go to Texas, coaches are going to go to Florida. They're going to go all these high populated areas to recruit. And West Virginia only have 1.7 million people. There's not going to be as much of a numbers based thing. So with the Aces, just trying to put together a collection of the best players in the state, so that way we can go showcase them and make it worthwhile for the coaches and the players.
Sure. So what comes with being an Aces player? Like what are you guys playing showcases, tournaments? Can you talk a little bit about what a player gets when he shows up with the Aces?
Yeah, for sure. So recently, just in the past couple of weeks, just signed a partnership with Marucci actually. So that's pretty excited about that. So guys will get pretty good deal on bats, gloves, batting gloves, what have you with that stuff. We have some pretty sweet custom uniforms we'll be rolling out next year. And the big thing that I'm looking forward to the most is we're going to have a player development portal where it's going to be guys will have strength conditioning, guys will have drill work. We'll be able to message guys throughout the team instead of like group text. So it'll be a pretty all encompassing thing that I'll be able to oversee, and the coaches will be able to help guys develop from afar. Because in the state of West Virginia, obviously, you're going to be a little bit more spread out with getting your talent. So we don't have the luxury of getting guys together once or twice a week over the winter like a lot of organizations do. So that's going to be kind of our outlet to make sure that the guys are getting what they need from a development standpoint.
No, that sounds
And
awesome.
then, yeah, no doubt. And then we run a pretty traditional summer schedule where we'll go, we'll play in the World Wood Bat. We'll play at a lot of colleges, make sure that everything we go to is a pretty well respected event. That way we know colleges will be there so guys can maximize recruiting. And then in the fall, we run a pretty unique schedule. It's my favorite part of the time of the year because we run about a 7, 8 week schedule, run about 18 to 20 games, 18 to 20 dates. We'll run a lot of double headers against colleges. It'll be Division twos, a couple NAIAs, junior colleges within West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and it's pretty good for those guys to be able to play against schools that they are currently getting recruited by, and they get to see what it's actually like to play against pretty high level college competition.
Excellent. So tell me a little bit about how many teams do you have? What ages are they? What's the organization look like?
So before last year, we would just run one or two high school teams in the summer, one or two high school teams in the fall. But to go along with the development side, and I just see there's a lack of it within the state. So I branched out into some youth teams starting last summer, and it's kind of taken off. I had one 11-year-old team and two 12-year-old teams. And then upcoming for this fall, I'm going to have an 11-year-old team, two 12s, two 13s, a 14, a 16 and a 17 team. So it's kind of blown up a little bit in the last year because people are starting to see value in it and see the kind of development and just the kind of exposure and what the baseball realm looks like on our side.
And man, other than Legion Ball, there's really not a lot of really well put together travel organizations, in our area.
Yeah, for sure. So it's um, something that's been lacking for a long time. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to surround myself with some good people and kind of help bring that along.
Okay, great. So talk to me about a typical roster, and let's look at the older, the high school guys. What's a typical roster look like? And we can start kind of diving into like the pitching side. So like what's a full roster, and how many pitchers do you carry, and kind of how many POs, how many two-way guys?
Right. Yeah. So
Average.
right. So we shoot for 12, 13 absolute max position guys. And obviously, a lot of those guys, when you're in high school, are two way. So, say probably five or six of those guys will be two way. And then we shoot for five or six POs as well. So, about 17, 18 kids total on the roster. That's kind of what we're looking like this fall and moving forward. That's going to be kind of the landscape we're looking for. And then obviously, when we go to the World Woodbat Georgia, it's a week long tournament. You're playing at least 6 games. So we'll have a couple kids that might not be with the Aces go down for that are looking for some exposure that their travel team might not be playing down there that week.
Sure. So talk a little bit about, I mean, most of the when I'm talking with the pitching coaches, I'm talking about how they kind of, recruit their roster, but really, I mean, you're almost doing the same thing, right? You're trying to fill a roster out. Can you talk about the difficulty, or maybe what you look at when you're trying to put together that roster and kind of fill out that pitching in order to compete? Because you guys are playing at some pretty good venues.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's pitching's king when it comes to putting together rosters. The team with the best pitching and the most pitching depth are the teams that are going to have the most success. So the big thing is just trying to find guys that maybe are under the radar. Like we had one this past year, Lance Hartley from Cameron, West Virginia. His high school has less than 400 kids in it. Nobody on the planet knows this kid exists. And fortunate enough to have a couple pretty good connections within the college realm that are like, hey, we saw this kid at our camp. He's a West Virginia kid. I think it's the guy that you need. So a little bit of vetting on my end through like Twitter and just social media and word of mouth, but then also just having some good connections with college coaches in the area also helps because they kind of throw some names my way.
So that's interesting. So one of the things that I find in working with guys is they always kind of sit back in the recruiting process, and they think coaches are going to like come find them. Can you talk about with the Aces kind of what your role is, what other roles you guys have in helping guys in that recruiting process, and what like maybe the player role, the parent role, and then like as a coach, what how you see your role?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're pretty fortunate to have early on put together some teams with some pretty good talent. So whenever guys see the Aces are in a tournament, college coaches are likely to come see at least one game, if not more than that. So on that aspect, we've had some success early on, which always helps because when you're getting recruited, you could be the best player on the planet, but if you're playing for the worst team on the planet, coaches aren't going to come watch because it's just not a bang for their buck. They're going to go to big travel tournaments. They're going to go to where the highest level teams are, and they're going to go to the games where they know that they can see the most high level players and have a chance to play for them.
Sure. What mistakes do you see players making in that recruiting process from your standpoint?
I think you just touched on it a second ago. Guys kind of wait back a little bit where it's the recruiting game. There's thousands of kids out there that are fighting for your roster spot. So I think the big thing is kind of putting your name out and putting your face in front of these coaches as much as possible, whether it's, emailing them on a regular basis, going to camps at the college, playing at, for teams that maybe have connections with that coach, just being able to have your face front and center as much as possible in front of these coaches. Cause it's one of those things where if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. They see so many kids that it's just tough to remember everybody.
What about on the parent side? What mistakes do you see parents making sometimes?
That they're the one contacting the coaches. Once a certain age, I know a lot of coaches, like, they'll put up with it in the recruiting process if they really want a kid, because they're like, hey, like, I want this kid. But once you get on campus, almost every school in the country has a no parent rule. Like, I know a lot of guys are like, hey, if your parents call me, you're either suspended, you're running, or you're cut. So I think that's one of the things is the parents take a little bit, which I completely get it. They want what's best for their kids and they want to aid in the process as much as possible. But I think on their side, it's kind of pushing their kid to be mature and have those conversations instead of them having forums, the big thing.
Sure. So if I'm a kid, what are the considerations? What do I need to be thinking about as I look at joining a travel team?
Big thing I would say is going to be cost first and foremost, because I know it can get crazy a lot of times with cost. I know with us, we do a vetting process to make sure that what we are allocating money to is beneficial for the kid. And then we also do the best we can to make sure that we keep prices as low as possible. Um, Second would be make sure that it's a travel organization that, one, matches up with your skill, and then two, that the organization has connections to get you to a college that maybe you don't want to go to, because obviously everyone wants to go to the LSU's, the West Virginias, the Vanderbilts, but
Vanderbilt's on
they
my list, right, Coach? Make sure
right.
you reach out to Vanderbilt.
Right. Yeah. Making sure they can, that they're good talent evaluators within the organization that can put you in contact with coaches that match your skill set as well as your personal needs, whether it's like your academics, your social, that kind of thing.
It's amazing how many parents I talk to. They think of none of those things when they heard one of the other kids that was local join this team, and they think he's good, so they try to join that team. They don't ask any questions, and then they're disappointed about halfway through the year with like, I'm paying all this money. Why are we playing here?
Yeah.
Or and like, well, didn't you ask about the schedule, or did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
That's one thing that the coaches and I do. Initially, like when we contact a kid or if a kid reaches out to us, we give them all the information, because it's like, hey, it's this much to play. This is where your money's allocated. Bang, 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 bang. List it out. These are the tournaments we play in. This is how many schools we played in front of last summer, and here's like what we can do to help you. And then it's whether we're having a tryout, a private tryout, whatever. If it's doesn't seem like a match for the kid and the family, then they don't waste their time.
sure. What would you say would be it, like if you could change some things in the travel world? What would be one or two of the things that you would change in travel baseball? You had the magic wand.
Right. I mean, I think the big one would be cost. I know a lot of these tournaments are kind of getting outrageous. Like we played in the big one. I'm not going to mention the name, but everyone kind of knows what it is. It's week long wood bat tournament. It's $3,700 for your team to play in, and they have 400 teams in there. And once you start getting to that, and it's kind of starting to be like the money grab type deal. Like I know my team played almost like 2 hours away from the host site, so it's kind of getting it back to where it started like 10 years ago when I was playing, where it's like, hey, we're having like 8 to 12 team tournaments of really good competition. That way, it's beneficial for everybody, and we can keep costs down instead of like, oh, I know that these teams that have no business being here are going to come here just because it's a good tournament, and I'm just going to make a ton of money out of it.
Well, and I heard that like you can pay like some crazy fee and play all your games right there at the main facility, but it's like another it's like another 5 grand or 10 grand or 12 grand or something.
It's crazy to have a certain amount of games played there. You pay X amount of dollars. It's insane.
Yeah, wow. Um, So let's talk a little bit about recruiting pitchers. So you're in the communication process, obviously, as being a travel coach. Can you talk a little bit about a lot of times parents don't understand when a college coach is interested in a player, before they reach out to that player, they're calling the travel coach, they're calling some people in that area that they know. Can you talk a little bit about the behind the scenes communication, and kind of how that works?
Yeah, for sure. So I know a lot of times coaches will reach out to us as an organization. It's like, hey, I'm recruiting, say 2024, because that's our senior class right now. I'm looking for, two right-handed pitchers that are 85 plus, and I'm looking for a corner outfielder with, above average speed and a plus bat to ball tool. He doesn't have to have power, but I want a guy that puts the ball in play a lot because that matches our program philosophy. So then it's, we go through our roster and it's like, hey, we got like these two or three guys that I think fit on the mound that are uncommitted. We got these two or three guys in the outfield. Send them some video, send them our schedule, send them their high school schedule, send them all that stuff, and then kind of go from there. And they watch them for a couple months, and then that's initially when that contact ends up happening with the player.
Sure. So I've asked the college coaches, and from your personal perspective, because I mean you've played at the higher levels as well as like dealing with these other coaches, so you know firsthand, especially as a catcher, right? So, well, what types of body types do you think coaches are looking for, or are they looking for specific body types when recruiting pitchers for the different roles?
Right. I think there's obviously coaches that like certain frames, um, certain styles. Like you can look at certain programs across the country that on the high level, and it's like a lot of their guys look the exact same. But I think what a lot of coaches are realizing now from the college and professional levels is we have so much data available through TrackMan, through Hawkeye, through Rapsodo. Like there's just so much information and data available that you don't necessarily have to be that 6'5", 200-pound pitcher anymore, because they see a lot of value in the guy that's 5'9" with a good vertical approach angle on his fastball that has a good ride at the top of the zone. It's like, okay, he has a great fastball. He has great numbers. He's just been taught a little differently than what he should with his arsenal. So I think that guys are starting to see value in that. So they're not exactly going after a certain body type anymore, which is great for players, because I know there's a lot of guys that, are 5'9" on the mound that maybe through 90 that got kind of looked over because he doesn't fit the mold of what a typical pitcher looks like.
Sure. What about the velocity? I'm always intrigued by the velocity question. I've asked a lot of coaches, hey, what's not necessarily the floor to get in the door, but what's the floor? Like you see a list of guys, what's the velocity that you feel that you have to be at in high school for a coach to come see you play? What's kind of the floor that you're seeing where coaches start to get interested in a guy and want to come see him?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's a little bit grad year dependent, obviously. Or so if you're a freshman throwing 86, you're going to have some pretty good schools coming to watch you. But I'd say for the vast majority, like 98% of high school kids, when you're like that junior senior range, as a right-handed pitcher, I'd say 85 plus, you're going to start having some pretty good schools coming and look at you. And as a lefty, I mean, anywhere from 82, 83 plus if you can control it, just because lefties are a little tougher to find that with some decent velo and good stuff. So a couple mile an hour difference between the two. But if you start to get to that mid 80s range, you're going to start having some schools calling.
You mentioned some metrics. Are you hearing from coaches, or do you think there's some metrics, some key metrics that kind of play at the next level from a pitcher standpoint?
Yeah, definitely. So, on the hitting side, they have attack angle, which is the angle your bat's coming at contact with the ball. And then on the flip side for pitchers, it's vertical approach angle. So a roughly average attack angle for a hitter is going to be seven degrees. So if you're a pitcher and you can deviate from that one way or the other, it's a lot harder for guys to hit the ball in the outfield against you. And obviously, when guys keep the ball in the infield and guys can strike guys out, you start to really gain some interest from school. So I'd say a big one, if guys have Rapsoda data, is going to be obviously velocity, your vertical approach angle, and then your extension numbers. So how close to home plate is the ball leaving your hand? Because you could be a guy that throws 88 miles an hour with above average extension and it plays like it's 92, 93. So those are three big ones that I hear a lot of guys talk about when they talk pitching.
What about on the statistic side? I know a lot of parents get excited about the statistics, but also from the college coaches standpoint, I don't think you've got a lot of college coaches calling and saying, "Hey, what guys have the best ERA?"
Right. Yeah, because they realize that if you're well, they hope that if you're a guy that plays for them, you're more than likely going to have some pretty good stats. So, um, and in your high school season, it's like, yeah, it's great to say like, hey, I had a sub 2 ERA and I was punching out two guys an inning, but that's not really important to them. Like you just said, the thing is they want to see you compete against really good competition. They want to see how you get really good hitters out. And they realize that if you're playing really good competition, there's a chance that you get hit around a little bit because you're pitching against guys that hopefully you pitch against in the next year or two in college.
Well, I want parents to hear what you just said, because a lot of times kids are really good at their high school or they're playing local Legion baseball or something like that, and they're doing really well. But when a lot of time when coaches look at a guy, it's hard to evaluate a guy in those environments. So they'll ask a guy, "Hey, go play here or go to this tournament or come to this camp," and they'll set up where there's higher competition. Can you talk about the advantage that the Aces have and how important that element is for coaches to see that those matchups?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was pretty much every event we played at this summer. There wasn't a off my memory and talking to players and coaches on like within the organization. There wasn't a single team where it's like, holy, like why did we play this team? I did the coaches and I did a pretty good vetting process to make sure that hey, in years past, there's been a lot of really good teams here, and a lot of good coaches have come to watch games. So most important things being able to play against good competition, and then um, kind of going from there and making sure that you're putting yourself in the best chance to have success, but then also put your face and name in front of as many college coaches as possible.
Yeah, because it's a sweet trying to find that sweet spot, right? You want to go play for a team or at a level where you're just getting smoked every game, right?
Right.
That's not helping you. And where you're the like dominant guy, and you're beating up on all the little guys, that's not a good scenario either, right? You want that area where it's hey, I'm playing against really good competition where I can be successful.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt. And it's like you said, that is pretty tough to navigate because obviously, like from my end and the coaches end, we want to put the kids in a position to succeed as much as possible, but we don't want to play, a team that we're going to 10 run every time. So it is finding the sweet spot of being able to find almost identical talent levels and put the teams in there.
Excellent. Um, so from a development standpoint, with pitchers, do you lean on one side or the other? Do you have like a favorite? Are you more of a drive line guy, a tread guy? Are you a National Pitching Association guy? Is there like a philosophy that I know that there's a mix of everything, right? But is there something that kind of rings your bell that you've seen work for guys and that you kind of lean towards?
I mean, there's a thousand different ways to skin a cat. So I think it's just depending on what each guy wants and kind of just what each guy needs from a development standpoint. And then with proximity guys that know how to teach it, because you can have the best program in the world and the best strength and conditioning in the world, but if it's poorly executed, you're not going to get anything out of it. So I think the important thing from the development side is finding someone that knows how to coach you through it, which is a big reason why we just signed the deal with Marucci. So we have that player development app. So kids that maybe are a little bit more remote and don't have great training facilities and great coaches around them, we can give them their program. It has videos, it has, sets and reps, it has everything that they need from afar. And then they can communicate through us, through text messages, through video on the thing, just to make sure that everything's getting done correctly.
How do you guys put that together or handle that, like from a team perspective? So you show up, one guy's wanting to do plyo balls on the wall, one guy's wanting to do reps with the connection ball. Do you kind of just let guys do their thing from a development side when you guys are playing through the season?
Yeah, for sure. It's, we asked the guys to be there about an hour before a typical game. We're going to switch it up a little bit this upcoming summer. What we're going to do is we're going to have everyone show up the day before the tournament starts, run a team practice every week. I was listening to a podcast that ABCA did with Jeff Petty from the Canes, and he does that with his guys. And I was like, man, how did that never cross my mind to be able to, get guys there just one day earlier, and then we could have a 2-3 hour practice where we can go over like some team defense. We can hit BP on the field. If there's some coaches in the area that want to come watch our guys play, they get a little bit of a preliminary feel for them. But yeah, to go back to your question, the big thing is letting guys be as individual as possible, as long as it doesn't take away too much time from the group.
So when folks are wanting to make the jump to a quality travel organization, they're playing local baseball. At what age should they do that, and how should that decision be made?
I think a lot of it is from a individual player standpoint, your talent level. Because if you're a kid that is good enough to play at an LSU or a Vanderbilt, they come looking pretty quick because it's pretty competitive recruiting in the SEC. So, if you're a freshman and you're playing as good as the seniors or better than some of the seniors in your area, it's probably a pretty good chance that you're a guy that's going to go to a pretty decent school. So I think that the process will start earlier for them, where they want to go as a freshman to go find a school. But then back to the vast majority, I think that like sophomore going into your junior year, or like your junior year going into your senior year, because that's when the majority of baseball players are going to get recruited, whether you're a mid-major Division 1 guy, Division 2, Division 3 JUCO guy in that area. So right around that, the sweet spot would be that junior year.
So with the new communication rules, August 1st being the first time that D1s can like actually have recruiting contact, can you talk about it really hasn't changed the environment for those underclassmen because coaches are still coming to see them, identify them, watch them play, track their progress. They're still having communication with you guys as travel coaches. They're not community recruiting stuff, but they're, hey, what's this kid guy? That kind of stuff. There's still that all happening. So can you give some advice to the underclassmen guys, freshmen, sophomores, kind of what they should be doing or what that typical path that you see guys that play college baseball?
Yeah, I really like that the NCAA went to that model because recruiting was getting outrageous. I mean, there's times when you see an eighth grader recruited and commit to a Power 5 Division 1. You're like, you have no idea what this guy's going to be like in 6 years when he gets on campus. So from that aspect, I'm really glad that they did that, because now at the younger level, those guys can really focus on development, because they were just trying to compete, which there's a place for competition, but obviously like you're still super young. You need to be able to develop as much as possible. And like you said, those schools see that they're going to see you as a freshman if you play for a really good organization, and then they're going to see you as a sophomore. Like, holy crap, he gained 6 miles an hour on his fastball. He has a lot better pitchability. Then they see you again as from your sophomore junior year, when that August 1st, it's like, hey, I saw him all summer. The last 2 years, he's really trending up. This is a guy that we need to get on campus. So it gives them the opportunity of just worrying about developing and not have to worry about like, man, well, my teammate just got a call from West Virginia, or this guy's got a call from Maryland. Why am I not getting the call?
Right, right. Can you talk? Everybody talks a lot about finding the right fit. It seems like it's so much even more important now, especially for the better guys, because now that the D1 rosters have expanded from 35 to 40, you've got a lot of potential unhappy guys that aren't getting a lot of playing time at that D1 level. You add the transfer portal to that, and it seems like the common progression for guys is go someplace, go somewhere else, then go somewhere. I mean, it's hard to find a guy that's going somewhere, they found the right fit, and they're staying there for 4 years. And I think a lot of that is on the front end, right? Trying to really find a place that I can play and that fits the needs, and knowing, hey, if this is a big time school and I'm a tweener guy and I get a small scholarship, hey, that tells me where I'm at going into the fall, right? So can you talk about that expanded scholarships, or the expanded roster? There's a lot of D2 guys sitting at D1 schools on the bench and maybe not contributing as much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that a lot of guys that I've talked to are like, well, I'm going to go here, and if I don't like it, I'll just transfer. It's like, well, if that's your thought process going in, the likelihood of you transferring is pretty high. So I encourage guys to find schools that potentially, I know it's a little tougher now, like you just mentioned, but find schools that have guys that have stayed for multiple years, that have a good culture, that, maybe even if as a freshman you don't play a ton, which is common if you're at a good school. If you go to a good program, you probably shouldn't play a lot as a freshman unless you're just a stud.
Right.
So it's being able to go and realizing like, hey, my freshman year, I might get 30 at bats, I might get 300 at bats. Like you don't know, but going there with the focus of, I'm going to find a place that fits my academic needs, my social needs, and then baseball needs, because the first two are going to be with you the rest of your life, and baseball ends for all of us at some point.
Yeah, sure. I'm just amazed at working with families that have never really sat down. They're in the car 8 hours every weekend, driving to tournaments, staying in hotels, and they've never really had a lot of conversations about, hey, you want to go to school in a downtown school, or do you want to be more rural? Do you want an enclosed campus? Do you want an open campus? Do you want to go to like some religiously based school? Do you want private, public? And they like, I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know what
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
kind of amazing. How do you guys do some education side on the recruiting and talking with parents and players about trying to help make those decisions or think about those things?
Yeah, we started this year, and it's moving forward. It's going to be a lot more insightful. We're going to have a lot of Zoom meetings with college coaches, some guys that have been through the process, just so they can learn firsthand what it's like. Guys that are going, like, that are actively doing it for their jobs. So, like I said, fortunate enough to have some friends that are recruiting coordinators and stuff along those lines that are going to be willing to come and talk, just to make sure that guys are educated, that they know what they need to look for, so they don't show up on campus and be like, this is not anything what I was expecting it to be.
Can you talk about scholarships? A lot of guys, at least the parents, some of the parents I talk to think, hey, I'm going to get a full scholarship when I go play baseball. I've paid all this money, driven halfway around the world, and now I'm going to go get my school paid for. And they don't really understand the equivalency scholarship and really the reality. I think it's advantage, or the advantage is on the pitching side. I think you'll see some more scholarship money, for some of the bigger arms. But man, it's a percentage. Can you talk a little bit about the reality of that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the Division I level, a fully funded school has 11.7 scholarships to give amongst the team. Division II fully funded has 9 athletic scholarships. Division III has no athletic scholarships. Little bit more leeway in the NAIA and JUCO world, but just from a 4-year standpoint, it's like you said, it's guys expect that they're going to get 100%. That's not happening. Um, Very few guys get offered those huge scholarships, and most of the time, if you're getting offered a huge scholarship like that, you're a potential draft guy, where they're just trying to entice you to come as much as possible. So, I think doing as much education on the front end as you can with that, so that way when a school does offer you 40%, it doesn't feel like a slap in the face. It's like, well, that's not bad. Half my school paid for before any academic money. Like, all right, yeah, that's a pretty good starting point.
And that's one of the other things I find that parents don't understand a lot about is now they can stack, right? Before, probably back even when you played, I don't think you were able to. If you had baseball money, you had baseball money. Couldn't stack the academics unless you were like had a really high academic floor. Now you can stack that money. So understanding the different pools and where their family sits on the front side of this decision, I think people get taken by surprise, and suddenly they're sitting across the desk from an administration or administrator And they're talking about, and that's the first time they're like thinking through that process. So they as difficult understanding the scholarship world, the whole college admission process and the cost and the federal student loans, it's a whole nother jungle out there that parents really need. They need to be looking at that side too before they get there.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I would highly suggest doing your homework as much as possible, like getting on the FAFSA website, just kind of familiarizing yourself with kind of where you sit. And then once you do start talking to schools, if you go on campus, take a trip to the financial aid office. Like the people there are more than happy to talk through it and help you. Or, if before you go on campus, make a couple phone calls and figure out, and you're like, man, like I'm gonna end up paying way more than I want to. Then you can call the coach, be like, hey, coach, like I really appreciate you reaching out to me, but I just don't think this can be a right fit from a financial standpoint. And then like you do it the right way, the responsible way, and the respectful way. You communicate, and then there's no hard feelings, and there's no surprises on either end.
And I think guys have trouble with that communication with the coaches because they're afraid to say no, or hey, maybe I'm not interested in that school. Coaches have that phone call every day. They're talking to hundreds of guys and it doesn't work out most of the time. So they're okay with having, as long as you're real and honest and straightforward with them, man, that's what they appreciate.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and that's one big thing that we preached with our guys this summer, because we were fortunate to have a pretty good roster with a lot of schools reaching out to different guys. It's like, hey, you never know. Like for one, let's say you're a kid that commits a certain school, that coach that you ghosted and you haven't said anything to, he might be your head coach in 3 years. Like you have no idea. So going about stuff and doing it the right way, and learning at an early age how to make some difficult conversations happen is just going to help them in the maturation process.
And you mentioned a little while ago about having a lot of college coaches contacts, right? Listen, when you play the game and you're through there and you're coaching, all the regional coaches in your area, and you probably know a lot of national guys just from being at a conference. You coach at this team, this coach knew this guy. It's a network. So like you said, don't burn bridges, don't tell lies, be straight, because all these coaches know each other.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's I saw a quote the other day. It was like everybody's only one or two connections away from knowing everybody in baseball, and it's true. It's like you could go to, like you said, any tournament and you talk and you're like, hey, do you know so and so? You're like, well, actually, yeah, I do, or I don't, but my friend does. So it's not hard to kind of get some real insight on a player, a coach, an organization, a college program. It's if you do the vetting process and just communicate, it's pretty easy.
So talk to me a little bit about, if I'm we talked a little bit about the underclassmen. If I'm a junior senior now, so I'm past my August 1st date, maybe I'm not getting any phone calls. What should I be doing now? What yeah, do you have some advice for those guys that haven't got a phone call yet?
Yeah, the big thing is one, don't worry about it, because the recruiting landscape's changed so much now with the transfer portal that coaches have the luxury of sitting back a little bit and waiting. They don't have to be as active on the front end with high school guys, because there's going to be the 21, 22, 23-year-old guy that, just graduated and is willing to grad transfer and play and say, okay, like I'm going to wait and see, test the markets there. Because if I can get a 22-year-old guy that's been a 3-year starter at his previous school, that may be an all conference or an all American at the Division II level, I think he's a guy that I can plug and play at my school while I have this 18-year-old kid develop. So it's not getting as worried on the front end if you don't have if your phone didn't get flooded with calls on August 1st if you're a junior, but but also not sitting back. Like you still want to be active. You still want to reach out to schools. You still want to go to camps with schools that are at your playing ability, um, and just going about it that way, and just being active on social media and just kind of putting your name and face out as much as possible.
You said something that was I think really important that players don't get. Reaching out to college coaches. It's I've done like recruiting seminars and stuff before where I teach parents like how to do this and that, and then crickets, no emails going out, no phone calls being made, and like there's this fear, right? of I guess I understand it a little bit, but uh you have to actively do it. You've got to recruit. There's what's the downside, right? But it's hard to get guys to do that.
Yeah, it is. That's something that I preached to the guys this year was making sure that they do reach out to those schools. I would do my best to reach out to schools in the area and the tournament directors that we played tournaments at. And it's like, hey, what's like, give me a list of schools that you know are going to be there. If there's more or less there, like that's fine. But like, give me schools that you know or schools that have been there in the past. I'd get those. I'd send them in our group me. Say, hey, hey guys, these 15 schools are going to be there this week. I highly suggest you reach out to them. It's like the coaches and I are doing it, but they'd like hearing from you as well.
Can you talk a little bit about the reaching out or the communication process from the standpoint of do you recommend like a certain should I'm going to email them first and I'm going to DM them then make a call? Is there like a mix of how you think you get the best result there?
I think emailing works a lot because, a lot of guys get spam emails or spam DMs. I'm sorry, and a lot of guys aren't as active on social media. But I mean, in the college coaching world, you have administration emailing you. You have scheduling stuff. I mean, you have all sorts of emails coming in, so they check their email daily. So I would highly suggest starting it out with the email, and also on the email side because we've had kids do this in the past. Don't make it a dear coach and send it to 100 schools. Like
Pull
take
the example off the internet and put your name in
yeah
there.
take the extra minute and a half to hey Coach Davis, my name's so and so, and then do a little research on the school and put that in the email because if, as a coach is glancing through it initially, if it's a blanket email, they're way less likely to actually read it. But if you put a little bit of information in there about the school itself, then they're more likely to like, okay, this kid actually cares. Let me see what he has to say.
I don't know if you run into this, but like this has been maybe a year or so ago. I'm talking with a group of parents and kids, and I'm talking about email, and I'm just seeing like blank looks. And I said, well, how many of you guys have ever sent an email to anybody? Like two hands went up. So like we're getting, I think these younger groups coming up, email is just not part of their world very much. So
No.
I think there's like a disconnect here between, that being a pretty solid source for a lot of coaches and things like that. And the kids, they don't have an email account. They've never sent an email. So there's a lot of education on that side too.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's like you say, it's a different world. Just it's funny. Last summer when I was around the guys, they don't high school kids don't send text messages anymore. What they do is they get on Snapchat and they send the text messages. It's like they solely communicate through Snapchat. It's the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen in my life. It's I text a kid and he doesn't answer for 3 days. But if I were to Snapchat that kid, like if I was his 16-year-old buddy and I Snapchat him within 30 seconds, I have a response. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. See, you're already starting to get old, right? The texting world, you're already behind. You can imagine where I'm at, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Yes. Talking to yeah, I mean it's crazy. It's like, hey dude, like I know you're on your phone 24/7 and I sent you a text 3 days ago. What is the deal?
And it
It's like,
popped
oh,
up.
yeah. Yeah, I know you have the notification marker there. Why didn't you respond? But yeah,
Well,
it's
and talk
crazy.
about that because I was talking with a guy the other night who got an email, a pretty important email, and he never saw it because he wasn't paying really attention to his inbox. So not only do you need to educate yourself on how to send that stuff and communicate, but the response is important. That tells a coach something, right? If I text a kid and I don't get a response for 2 weeks, that's not flying real well.
No, yeah, no doubt. That's one thing that we've had to get on a couple kids this past year about. It's like, hey, like you initiated contact, coach got back to you the next day. He hasn't heard from you in 3 weeks. Like, what's the deal? Are you still interested? Oh yeah, I'm interested. Well, he doesn't think so, or he doesn't like he's moved on by now potentially. Like you need to like today, as soon as we get off the phone, you need to contact this guy, tell him that you messed up. You just it slipped your mind, whatever. You didn't respond to him for X, Y, and Z, but like you want to move
Yeah.
forward with this
And odds
process.
are you're not that good to do that. And if you are that good, then you need to be respectful and tell a coach, hey, I'm just not interested.
Yeah, for sure, 100%, and do it in a respectful manner, like you just said. Don't be like, Coach, like I'm too good for your level. It's like, you think so? How many practices of ours have you been to? How many games of ours have you been to? You know for a fact that you're too good for our level. So that's another thing that I would encourage kids in the fall. If hey, on a weekend, every college for the most part in the country is inter squatting on the weekend. Go see, because you may think that you're too good for a level. You go and watch. It's like they threw 5 arms today that were 92 plus, and during BP, everybody on the team hit at least one ball over the fence. It's like, if you can't do those things, you probably can't play at that level.
Sure. So with the changes in the 40-man roster, a lot of with the transfer portal, that mix of what is coming into schools has changed dramatically. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that's had on junior colleges, or maybe the with the cost of college, how that junior college option is not just for, hey, an academic kid that has a little trouble academically, or has like maybe a tool deficiency that he's got to work on for a couple years. Can you talk about junior colleges and how you're seeing that play out?
Yeah, for sure. I think back starting when COVID kind of happened and that log jam started really happening at rosters, where guys elected to take that COVID year. JUCO, the product of JUCO baseball across the country has gotten better, and guys are starting to see the importance of it. And like you mentioned, with the expanded rosters and with transfer portal being so prevalent, where guys are bumping around so much, you can go play at a pretty good JUCO and play pretty good competition for 2 years, and you spend a third of the cost or a fourth of the cost, or you might even go for free, depending on your area, the kind of just monetary luck that the junior college has. So guys can save so much money. We have a couple kids that are like the teetering Division 1 guys, where it's like, yeah, you might be a D1 guy, you might be a high level D2 guy, and they're starting to really lean towards like, well, maybe I want to go to a junior college because I can go get my credits, go develop and play against good competition, and then from there, now I know in 2 years where I sit.
Can you talk a little bit about maybe a good recruiting story that you've heard? Maybe a guy that was undersized, or just worked hard and it kind of paid off in the end.
Yeah, for sure. I think one guy is a kid that we had the last couple of years from Morgantown, West Virginia, Tristan Millick, super, super undersized kid. Um, he's from an undersized standpoint, underweight kid. He's 6'2", like that typical pitcher frame, but he's like 130 pounds. So it's a kid that, like, he never had much velocity, but was always competitive because he threw strikes at a young age. And then in the last year, he started like dabbling in the weight room a little bit, kind of unsure. You're like, man, I'm sore. I don't really like this sore feeling. I've gone through 16 years of life without ever picking up a weight, and I've been fine. Why do I need to do this type deal? But ended up he is fortunate enough to have had some conversations with some pretty good baseball guys that have shown him the importance. And he's a guy that most people thought like, oh, he'll never see the field, or he'll never get a college scholarship, or he has never no chance of ever playing in college, but took time to really devote to a little bit of the weight room, nutrition, gained 7-8 miles an hour in a year, and ends up with a pretty good Division 2 scholarship at a place relatively close to home that I think is a perfect fit for him from an academic and social standpoint. So just seeing him really devote himself over the course of 12, 18 months and seeing it really pay off for him in the end and surprise a lot of people has been pretty cool.
Yeah, those conversations, especially those guys. But I gotta imagine, especially with the Aces, you guys have put a lot of guys in colleges. It's got to be a pretty rewarding conversation with the college coach, and then with the kid and the family.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no doubt. It's one of those things where you don't want to spoil a surprise, because a lot of times the coaches will tell myself or tell our coach, he's like, hey, we're gonna offer him, like we're gonna offer him this. Just wanted to let you know beforehand. And it's like one of those things where it's like you're giddy for the kid. You're so excited that you want to tell him right away, but you can't. And then maybe a couple hours later, the next day you get a phone call and it's like, hey coach, like he offered me, like I think I'm going to commit. It's like, I'm so excited, and it's really cool to hear the excitement in the kid's voice when that day finally comes.
Yeah, very, very, very rewarding. So as we close up, why the Aces? If I'm looking for travel teams, why should I choose the Appalachian Aces?
The big thing is, you kind of touched on it a little bit. Numbers don't lie. Um, we've had 120 kids up to this point since 2018 get college scholarships or currently playing in college, and that spans from Power Five Division One all the way to junior college. So pretty wide network of being able to place kids in good fits. Um, from a development standpoint, we're gonna start rolling out a little bit more development material so we don't have to bring kids together. We can do it remotely. And then three, cost effective. From all the kids I've talked to, that we've had some kids leave other organizations to come to us in the last year just because of the cost effectiveness. We're doing as good or better of a job than people in the region for half the cost. So we've found ways to be able to keep costs down for parents while providing an A+ experience.
Excellent. Chase Illig, Appalachian Aces. Appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much.